thanks for coming down, because it's something that I've wanted to do here for a while. I want to invite the string playing community down, and obviously their mums and dads, to give a bit of an overview of what's involved in going electric from a technical perspective, but also from a fun that you can have perspective. And I would say at the outset that the whole purpose of all this is all about your personal self-expression and your creativity, which is what we all love about music anyway. So it's not really very different from anything if you do play, especially if you're a classical player. It's not really anything different from what you're already doing. It's just broadening out where it can go to. So that's my main point, is we're not tearing down the classical establishment. It doesn't ruin your technique. It doesn't destroy your violin playing or anything if you want to continue with your classical playing as I do. But it does open up a whole lot of doors, and that's really, really fun. So I'm going to kick off with just demonstrating a few things, and then I'm going to talk about what I did and what I used and all that sort of stuff, which I don't think is as interesting as the playing part of having fun with the music. So I'm just going to plug in here, and I'll show you a couple of things that you can do with electric violin. I'm going to be using a simple device here called a loop station or a loop pedal, and really it's just like a little recording device that I can operate with a foot switch, so that I can play something and then record it while I'm playing, and then I can put a layer over that and a layer over that, so I can have my own little orchestra or string quartet sound up here. So I'll just give you a few minutes of that. obviously it's just building up little layers of sound with it. You can also do some other ways of accompanying that. That's a very, very basic thing. So I'm using just the violin's got a pickup built into it, which you're going to need to get to an amp. Either you can stick one on or you can buy an electric violin, which is what all these are, and they have a pickup built into them. And then you're going to be going into an amplifier. You've got to have some kind of sound amplification system. Then beyond that, there's all these fun little toys down the front that I'm going to introduce you to. Also going to change amps. Amplified, but to me that's a pretty dry sound. And if we add a little bit of reverb to that, it simulates being in a room. A little bit like being in a church or a hall. Degrees of that. So you can have your own little Sistine Chapel concert going on. And I like that. That's I'll show you all the pedally details later. And the other thing that I quite like using is a little echo. Because once you get around playing strictly known classical pieces, and or you're playing with a pianist or an orchestra or something, the violin on its own has a certain charm. If you put this in, that's pretty much the basis of all the stuff that I'm going to be showing you tonight. Is that you've got to have an amp, you've got some sort of amp, you've got to have some sort of electric violin, and the loop pedal I think is a kind of go-to if you're going to get a setup like this, because it allows you to have so much creative fun just building up your own ideas, painting your own musical pictures, just through improvising like that, putting ideas together. Has anyone got any questions up to this point? Because tonight's your chance. So why are there all these different violins and amps up here? I've deliberately eliminated a lot of the terrible products. I started electric violin playing back in the mid-90s when I got rung up by a guy, or a booking agent for a guy called Demis Roussos. I don't know if any of you older people remember Demis. Yeah, the Caftan man. And I needed an electric violin for the tour to play in his band, and I went and bought an electric violin and an amp and everything, but I didn't know a lot in those days, and since then I made a lot of mistakes and played a lot of terrible instruments and amps and things, and finally got through 20 years of doing this to something that I think is really working well. And that's why I've come here to Concept, because they only stock really great stuff, and what I've got out here is the cream of the products here. So what you're hearing tonight is really a great example of what you can set yourself up with for the strings, for the electric strings. The violins vary a lot. These beautiful looking instruments. These guys, and this one which I'll show you is a bit different in a minute. These guys are made by a maker in Melbourne, Paul Davies, who makes these. They're called Spur violins. That's his company name.
and they're based on a normal acoustic violin. And the reason they're slightly modified, they only have one sound hole, and they're slimline. They're only part of the depth of a normal violin depth on the side here. It's normally deeper, and they've got a completely flat back. And these were his modifications so that when they're amplified, they don't get feedback problems in the same way, and the tone of an amplified instrument, it's more in keeping with the end result through the amp, closer to what you would have heard with your normal violin. Whereas if you amplify a normal violin, you get a whole lot of things that you didn't subscribe for, a whole lot of spurious sounds and frequencies. So, and these also have on board, he's got his own design of pickup. He's got a very unique pickup. It's actually the Soundpost is the pickup system. Yeah. It's a Soundpost pickup system. He designed it himself, and then he's put on the volume control, so you can set your volume as you go. And this is the kind of bad boy of the family, which is designed more for a much louder rock band sort of application. Initially, it's just got no ribs, so you can see through there. So there's no reverberation There's no reverberation chamber on the instrument, but because the Soundpost pickup is still running front to back, you're still getting a heap of vibration through the panels, and you get a very true sound with it, which I'll demo in a minute. And these are beautiful instruments for all sorts of circumstances. I've used them from, playing classical music to playing backing sections, studio work. I've used them live in rock bands. But if you've got a really loud band, then you get less feedback problems with one of these. It's equivalent of one of the solid body guitars you can see around the shops. The old classical guitars are hollow, and they work to a point when you amplify them, but then if you're playing pretty loud, you're going to need a solid body, and this is the spur violin answer to the solid body. I'll just demo that a little bit, and I'll also put it in the context, so I'll give you a bit of a pedal education on the way. Put that down. Sound out of them. expect that with that amount of distortion on. The others here, and the thing I love about these three here is that I guess they have a certain traditional connection in their look, but also they feel when you're playing them, they really feel just like a normal concert violin to play. Then there's these really wacky looking things from Yamaha, which are pretty cool. They've really done the design thing on these. And they will take normal shoulder rests, which is really important. System, and this has what's they have a slightly different system. They have what's called a bridge pickup system, a ceramic pickup, piezo pickup in the bridge, and it has a slightly less natural sound. Still works great. Still sounds like a violin, obviously. And this is their Yamaha electric violin. And the original electric violin they started out with a couple of decades ago. This is based on, it's actually called the silent violin. And it was developed in Japan because of high density living, so that people could practice violin at home without disturbing the neighbour who was just about there. And it has a little headphone jack, and you put your headphone on, and you can even turn on a little bit of reverb so it sounds like you're in a nice hall. You can plug it in and play it, and the neighbour just hears this, which through a wall wouldn't carry very well, which is the whole idea.
How do you rate that one? How does it stack up compared to the other ones you're playing?
What's that?
How does you rate that, or how does it stack up compared to the other ones you're...
To this one?
Well, I suppose the Yamaha, or even the other three.
Graham, this has got a special plug-in system.
Yeah, that one's designed for silent practice, so it actually comes with a little preamplifier and it comes with headphones. So when you plug the headphones in, it's got a little reverb unit built in. It actually sounds very much like you are playing at full volume. I have that. So
you have this?
Yeah, well, very similar. I don't think it's got the extra thing for the shoulder rest though. Maybe it's a different.
Right. But they normally are, because I've got one of the older ones. Back in about 2001 or something. They will take a shoulder rest. Oh no, it has its own one that screws on.
Yeah, it's this funky weird.
It's got its own model. So, how do I rate them? Well, I think it depends what you like.
Yeah.
You know, the same thing as this one that you heard. Yeah. It's got the piezo pickup in the bridge, and it gives a really good robust sound. To me, it lacks the sensitivity of response that you get off these fiddles, which are much closer to playing even this one, much closer to playing an acoustic fiddle. But a lot of people swear by them.
Yeah.
So it's really horses for courses.
Yeah.
And I think that it's also a budget thing. Normally these spurs come in at around $2,500–3,000, and I deliberately hounded the manufacturer for these models that were earlier prototypes. They're actually the same models that I've got at home, because I was buying these 15 years ago from
Yeah.
Paul. And these are specials that he got out to us. They've been in stock since about 2008 or something like that. And we specially got them over here at a discounted price. So they're, these are 12.50 for the 12.50 for the semi acoustic, 12.50 for the solid body, and this is the one of the more advanced prototypes. That's a bit more. That's 1995. And these come in. The Yamahas come in. You see, it's a whole budget thing because the Yamahas come in at $899.
Yeah.
So it's a big difference.
Yeah.
But if you're willing to stretch, go the extra mile, you'll never regret it with the spurs because they'll just give you that much more.
How do you find the neck?
The neck on them?
The neck on that.
On the Yammies?
Yeah.
They're really smooth.
Yeah.
They're really smooth. I find it all very realistic to play in terms of the the physical dimensions and everything.
Yeah.
So I think does anyone have any questions? Because I've got about 15 minutes left, and I'd like you to go home feeling like you found out all you wanted to find out and heard all you wanted to hear, because I don't know you all, and I don't know where you're all coming from and what you've got in your imagination or your practical work if you're using a fiddle. But I've got a lot of pedals here. I can talk about all the different amps. These AER amps, they're a German company. I think they're German, aren't they? Yeah. These are amazing. These are my favorite amps. Before you go to big PA systems, they're lightweight. They're really robust. They've got. Well, I've actually got the microphone. 1, 2. I've actually got the mic plugged into this one. They've got a mic socket as well, so you can have your violin plugged in and a mic. I often use that at gigs with my band in small venues. They're about $1,900, $1,800 to $1,900, depending on what finish you get and all that sort of doodah. But basically, they're around that mark. But they are superb. It'll last you for life if you've got one of those. You'll never look back.
What wattage is it?
They're 60, but they're a hell of a sound.
They're loud, 60.
Yeah, they're really loud. In terms of, this is Fishman's, another company that make great acoustic amps. I've tried pretty well everything, and a lot of people claim to have really good acoustic amps, but when you hear them up against these guys, the AERs and the Fishmans, I think, really come up. The Boss is pretty good. Boss has got a pretty nice sound for the acoustic sound. And then there's this little guy here, this pair, which is a PA system like you use for your band, for vocals and anything else that plugs in, keyboards. It comes with a little mixer that packs in the back of the speaker, so you could have 4 of your friends jamming with you with this system. And it's under $1,000. It's $995. There you go, about $1,000. And you've got the stereo PA system, and you can plug in backing tracks and all sorts of things, and half your neighbourhood can plug into that with you.
How do you find the street cubes? How do you play it through like a street cube and EX? How do you find them?
Street cube?
The Roland street.
Oh, the Roland cubes?
Yeah, what do you find?
Depends what you're playing.
Yeah.
I think the Roland cubes they're really designed as a guitar amp, not a violin amp.
Yeah.
And the violins, they're a bit weird when we start to plug in, as some of you in the audience, I know. No, it doesn't quite work the same as the guitar amps because all the frequencies are different. So these are the amps that we found, and the little PA systems. They work better than anything else.
Yeah.
I mean, you can have a big PA system, but they're hard to lug around. So I just got them to put out this little one from Yamaha today because they're really beautiful sound. I'll show you. Just plug that into. That. Oops, that's live. These are, I've seen a lot of bands, in fact I do it myself. I use these if it's a small gig. I use these as a vocal PA. The quality of them is really that good, which is usually a good clue for an acoustic instrument. If someone's using something for a good vocal PA, violin voice is very similar to the human voice, and it seems to work well. Thank you. Thanks for your questions. I don't know if that's any help, but
No, that's great, yeah.
and also in the next few minutes, I think it'd be good if anyone wants to have a try, come and have a try out on these, because it's fun, but you also get a feel for things that if you haven't tried them before, they're pretty unique. Oh, and I've got this little guy. Yeah, let's not forget that. Whoa, it's gone out tune. This pen. I know you're a player. What did you come down with anything particular in mind?
I was wondering if you had any pitch shifting pedals there at all?
Like an octave pedal?
Yes.
Yeah, I do. I'll plug one in.
Excellent.
Good point.
Yep. I've never tried one, so I was curious about that.
I see you've brought a Viper in your bag.
I did.
Viper's the brand of violin, not the snake.
I'm glad you clarified that.
So this is the poor cousin in the family in a sense, but they've really gone, you know, for how much is it? $4.99 or $4.95. It's beautifully made. At least they've got all that down. It still feels like a normal violin to hold. The sound's a little bit on the thinner side, but you'd expect that for that sort of price. You buy a $200 guitar or buy a $2,000 guitar, you're going to notice the difference. It's the same. And you can usually dial that out with a bit of. It's like bad food. If you drink enough, you don't notice, and if you put on enough EQ, put lots of bass on, roll the treble off, you won't notice. And I put a bit of reverb, that usually fixes most things. Playable electric violin and if that was the passport for a kid to go into a rock band with their school friends, I would say great, good on you. Or someone who just wants to start exploring the realm of violins, maybe get this and get something like a little Roland Q, which I don't think is the ultimate acoustic instrument amp, but they're still good. They're still a good quality amp. And you know, all these things, I'm just trying to encourage people to have the best possible experience. And then of course you've got to be realistic with, you've got to still have money to eat and buy stuff for the kids and put petrol in your car. And if it is that critical, then, you know, why hold back from creative exploration if money was going to get in the way? And $4.95, it's not a lot nowadays to pay for something, and I think it's perfectly reasonable value. And it's got its own little tone controls and volume controls there. So.
Does that come in only full size? I know the Yamaha's only full size. Is that?
Look, the fractional sizes with electric violins are very, very scarce in the good brands. You can find anything on the internet, but they're only going to be mostly worse than this. I don't know if anyone's doing good fractionals in the electrics.
They can do one.
They do exist. I've seen them online. You know, in the cheap Chinese violin department, there's, you know, for $200 you can get a violin online, but it's going to sound a bit like a nail on tin. And
it's the guy who does the spur over East.
Does he do fractionals? Not yet. He's about to find a new manufacturer in Australia to where he's the plant where he's going to cover the boards and everything. And he's really excited about going fractional. So he's going to have a whole lot of those, but it won't be before the end of this year.
Okay.
So just to keep. But if you like, see Tanya afterwards, get your details, and you can connect you there.
Yeah.
A general question on history. I remember seeing Jean-Luc Ponty in 1976.
Oh, yes.
So were people solving some of these technical issues in the jazz and rock in the 70s? Because you sort of alluded to the 90s as Nigel Kennedy's come in the 90s or something too.
Sorry,
others.
what were you asking about?
Well, were the technical things started to be solved even in the 70s? You
Yeah,
referred
well,
to the 90s and
the first fully electric violin, which the design of these is actually very heavily borrowed from, 1932.
yeah, right.
1932 from Rickenbacker, the guitar company. They kicked it off with a really space-age design and great magnetic guitar pickups just under the end of the fingerboard here, and that was revolutionary. So actually there's been really good, pretty good design. They were probably slightly harsh sounding. I've never had the opportunity to actually see one in real life and play it. But tone's always been a problem because most things were orientated for the guitar world.
Yeah.
And they needed to boost all their mids and highs. So all the amps and the circuitries and everything's all designed to boost the daylights out of the mids and highs. So when we plug a violin in which has an abundance of mids and highs, it sounds really kind of edgy. We usually have to dial off all the high stuff and turn up the bass. So that has always been a struggle with the instruments until recently, with some of the better designs in the, this has got a circuit in it to make it sound like a violin. If it didn't have the circuit, it would sound scratchy too. And Paul's very carefully designed with the spur violins, those natural pickups in that solve a lot of those problems as well.
Yeah, it probably was that Jean-Luc Ponty and Jeff Beck were kind of out guitaring each other when I saw them.
Well, Jean-Luc he used to use the Barkus Berries in the early days, and then he switched to Zeta, who started making all those MIDI compatible sort of ones as well that you could plug into the equivalent of a synthesizer. But they always had to EQ them a lot to get the sound right. Yeah. And most people now, including myself, cart around a little box that, hang on a second, I'll turn this on. Don't give me frights. Cart around a little box like this, which is called a preamp, and it's got really great tone controls on, and a special thing for dropping out all the violin sensitive frequencies that can be a bit harsh when you go into normal systems. So I always pack one of them in my bag, and I can pretty much use any violin on any system, and I can get the sound guy, I can send him down the cable a beautiful sound with this, and then he can't mess it up after that. So that's why I buy those and recommend them, because they are they'll keep you out of trouble. Sound guys always say they know how to get a good sound for your violin. They rarely do. They rarely do. So this just completely eliminates that disaster happening. That's Graham normally stocks these. They've had a problem with supply from the Australian distributor recently, but they'll be in the next weeks, I think.
Yeah.
Called a Sans amp, but we can talk about that in detail after. Yeah. Thanks for your question. Yes.
Do you use a chorus or flanger?
Yeah, I love chorus and flanger with the violins, and we were just talking about Jean-Luc Ponty, and obviously he was one of the big people in the 70s who got into all that and enlightened us to what a violin sounds like with all that. I've got a chorus here, I'll plug one in. Let's take one of these out. Take that out.
Which is with the wah as well, do you use the wah?
Yep, yep. Give you a bit of wah therapy as well.
Yeah.
chorus is great. Right, and you can turn it up to a faster chorus too.
And reverb on some of your amps, though. Yeah.
You do. Now, this is a good question. All these amps have at least a reverb and delay, some sort of delay. Delays this sort of echo thing here I've got here. And the reverb is, as I said before, it's the slight bit of spaciousness that Sistine Chapel sound. So the good amps usually have at least a reverb, if not reverb, delay and chorus on them. And what I'll say about that is that the good amps have a really good quality reverb, delay and chorus on them, and the cheaper amps have maybe a less satisfying quality on them. And if you have good quality pedals, you could actually use an amp that sounded pretty good, but if it's in a cheaper range, its effects will be probably a little bit disappointing. These are not like that. They've got really nice effects. The disadvantage is you have to keep coming over to the amp to adjust them, whereas I can switch them on and off here, or I can just lean down quickly and grab them, and often on stage your amp's a little way away. And the other thing is that you can arrange them in a sequence, because when they're on here, if I get a loop pedal going, everything I put through the loop pedal is going to go through whatever the effects on the amp are.
Oh.
And if I want, whereas what I was doing before, I can put down a layer with lots of reverb, and then the next layer I could put down with completely dry, and the next layer I could put down with some chorus. So being able to switch on and off here, especially with the looping, is really, really handy. Now, you asked about an octave pitch shifter. I'll just grab one. We're going to go pitch shifter and wah-wah. Slowly cannibalising my pedal board at the back here. Off. Turn that down. Take that out. This guy. Go there. Okay, try that. So normally, that's as low as you get on a violin. If I put on a 1 octave, and even if I want to do some sort of melody a bit more, where's my shoulder rest? Start to get booked as a cello player. Yeah. Etc. You can also go down another octave as well there. adjust how much of the effect you have. Or just as a background to the normal note. You can hear it there like a ghost behind the note. So you can vary that a bit more present. It's lots of fun when you're looping because you can put down a bass part with that and then switch back to normal and play over the top, which is something I can do right now. Turn this off again. Put him back in instead of this one. So that's a bit of fun, and that's really just the beginning. Yeah. To give you an idea of in this particular wire, that this has got an adjustable got an adjustable Q on it as well. So I can set a bit more. Just try with one. So you can go exploring sounds and combinations for years. Yeah, any other questions?
Is there a violin connecting to MIDI?
Not really in the way that I would like to. Zeta make a MIDI violin, and they make their own MIDI controller their own MIDI patch box thing that it works with, but it's not like a real sort of MIDI synth where you can kind of design your sounds. You kind of select flute, trumpet, piano, whatever the sound is, and it's pretty limited. Yeah. The problem is, a guitar, they've got really long strings comparatively. They get a really good even vibration. They've got a steel bridge, brass bridge, and they've got frets. So it's a really defined, there's a small attack point with the pick, and then it's gone. And they've got this, so they've got a long length of string vibrating, and you've got a brass fret, and it keeps it really easy for the signal transference. The violin, the bow friction on the string, the actual, the drag noise, it completely confuses the signal. So you get the note signal, plus you get all the white noise from the bow, and the MIDI interface just freaks out and makes it very unreliable. That's the problem.
The technology needs to be different. Maybe instead of just the contact between the string and the bow, should be replaced with some electric.
Yeah, like the guitar was back in the old day. You've got one here, haven't you? In the back room somewhere. Saw one? An old guitar. It actually doesn't have strings, but it has things you put your fingers on, and it changes the pitches. So yeah. Thank you. How many players are here? Just put your hands up. I know you play, you play, you play, you play. Okay. Okay. All right. So if you want to come up and have a quick look at the instruments and things, or if you just want to have a chat, we're going to sign off from me anyway. So thank you all for coming down. We've got Graham's organised wine and cheese here. If you want to stick around, have a chat, have a look at the instruments.
Thank you.